So after the long run we did Sunday, we now have 37 miles on this guy, and I told you this is past the fully tested protocol. It passed all of the checks that I want to do now with these racers. So we did a first run, we did a workout, I did a threshold test on the treadmill, then I did a long run in it. But with it sitting at 37, I thought I would just finish the deed, get it up to 50. That feels like a good mark for me for a racing shoe. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a final run for testing this guy, get it up past 50 miles, and then I will give you my full review of the shoe. Of course, we'll dive deep into the ride, but I'll also let you know my thoughts on the upper, including these laces, the fit, the feel, the performance of the foam, the outsole rubber, projected durability, and also some alternatives to this shoe if it's not going to work for you. Alright guys, so it is time to dive into the review of the Hoka Cielo X1 here. And now we are back in the office tonight. It's been a little while since we did a review in here, but it's late. I wasn't able to film outside like I like to do after my run, so we'll be in here. So first, I wanted to give you a little bit of context on my experience with the shoe before we dive into all the technical details. So I got the shoe a few weeks ago. It now just hit 50 miles with that run that we did this afternoon. First run was an 8-mile progression run right around the neighborhood here, a very hilly neighborhood, by the way. Worked some marathon pace, worked some regular aerobic effort, and I think I ended with around threshold pace, that 6 flat zone. Next run I did the next day after that, which was the day after my daughter was born, actually. This thing arrived on my daughter's birthday, January 31st. So the next day I did a threshold workout test versus the Nike Vaporfly, which was really interesting because that shoe is much different in feel than this, which we'll get into. So that was about 6 more miles on the shoe, I think, because I did a warm up and then went into some of that faster threshold work. And I didn't touch it for a few weeks, ran in a bunch of the other marathon racers we've been testing, like the Tier Valkyrie Elite, the Diodora Gara, the New Balance SC Elite V4. And then I came back around to this last weekend for a 22-mile long run, which was an absolute beast of a workout. Shout out to Jack Daniels. And for that run, we did a 4-mile warm up into a 16-mile workout in the middle of that 22 miles. So it was essentially 16 miles straight at marathon pace with 2 threshold miles baked into that in a very hilly neighborhood. Like I said, I got 1,000 feet of elevation gain. So that was the best test of the shoe. It's almost a marathon simulator type of a workout where I was out there for 2.5 hours working for 16 miles of that on fatigued legs. I think I ended last week on 100 miles. I hit 120 a few weeks ago. So really good workout, really able to test the capabilities of this shoe in the true environment, or almost the true environment that we'd want to see a race day shoe perform. And then today I ended it with 13 nice and easy, relaxed miles. Ended up progressing it a little bit down to steady zone. I was almost hitting 7 flat in some places, but then I pulled it way back because I am not recovered from that 22-mile beast of a workout still. So that got us up to 50 miles on the Hoka Cielo X1 here. And to remind everybody, my criteria for testing this racing shoe, our criteria, because we aligned on this together, thank you all for your input, is a first run where we get familiar with the shoe, a second run, which is a workout, and then a third run, which is a long run. So 3 runs total. That's going to be the way we test racing shoes. Me personally, I usually only put, before I did so many of these tests with racing shoes, before I reviewed a lot of shoes and had this channel, I would only put 2 runs on a racing shoe usually. So the last shoe that I used for a race was the Nike Vaporfly last year, and I only put 1 run on that shoe before my 119 half marathon last year. So I'm actually not sure what I'm going to race in yet for my next marathon, but these shoes will have a lot more miles going into them because of all these tests I'm doing than I would typically put on a shoe. But that's in contrast to how I like to test training shoes. For example, we've had the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 come in, the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, the New Balance Rebel V4. For those types of shoes, I like to get 50 to 100 miles. I've been getting them all up to the 100-mile mark recently, but with the New Balance 880 V14, it's been a little bit of a struggle. But I like to put a little bit more mileage on training shoes to see how the durability does. But with this type of a shoe, that is not the primary concern. It's mostly how does it work for different runners' mechanics and what is the performance at different race paces and different durations, which we've accomplished with the Cielo X1 here. So with that, let us dive into an overview of the shoe. So the Hoka Cielo X1 is Hoka's souped up marathon racer. Now, a lot of brands these days are hitting the market with two different racers. In the Nike camp, you got the Vaporfly and the Alphafly. From Saucony, you got the Endorphin Pro and the Endorphin Elite. From Adidas, you got the Adios Pro and the Evo, which none of us regular folks can get their hands on. And now Hoka's joining that two shoe camp as well. They got the Rocket X2 and they got the Cielo X1 here. So the way that we see brands split these marathon racers, they go traditional for one of their shoes and a little bit souped up for the other one. So if we think about what a traditional marathon racer is, I'm not talking about a racing flat. I'm talking about the tradition that harkens back to 2017, 2018 when Nike first came out with that Vaporfly. And the Rocket X2 has more of that traditional character in that there's a 40 millimeter stack in the heel, a true 40 millimeter stack, not what we see in here, which I'll get into in a second, and not a super aggressive rocker. Yes, there's a rocker, but not as wild and curved as a geometry that we see in a shoe like this or the Endorphin Elite. Now with this guy right here, it is massively rockered. There's a huge stack of foam and it's a little bit heavier, but that heaviness is coming from a width of the platform here. You can see that the shoe has a nice wide base throughout from the rear all the way to the forefoot, which adds a little bit more stability than other marathon racers out there. And now diving into the midsole here. And so this is an interesting shoe because Hoka is using a loophole to get around the rules that World Athletics set that says you can only have 40 millimeters in the heel back here. And so the way that they're measuring this 40 millimeters is directly under the heel. And you can see the heel stack here. This is probably where the 40 millimeters starts. And then if you go here, this is 46 millimeters. And so Running Warehouse measured the shoe to have a 46 millimeter heel and a 39 millimeter forefoot. And as soon as I put this guy on, I could tell that it had a higher than 40 millimeter heel. It feels gigantic underfoot. It's also got two different types of foam. So you can see where the plate is. It's got this crazy cutout in the foam and this winglet, which Saucony pioneered, should add a little bit more stability. But you can see where this plate is. Sitting on top of the plate, we have a softer layer of Piba foam. And then underneath the plate, we have a little bit of a firmer, more structured layer of Piba foam. So this firmer foam out in the back, that's going to add the stability. That's what's going to give you those planted landings. And then the softer foam, that's what's going to add a really nice step and feel. It is a very comfortable shoe. And it's also going to add some of that pop and bounce when you're running fast. You're going to be getting a lot of that energy return feeling, that nice sinking in and then shooting up from this top layer of softer Piba foam. And then we do see a full length carbon fiber plate here, and you can see again we got all these crazy cutouts throughout the midsole, which should save some weight but also just add to the swag of the shoe. And the carbon fiber plate is going to run from all the way in the back here to the front. I could not feel the plate at all when running at any pace, which is a really good thing. This is a very comfortable shoe. Again, you do get a lot of benefits from having such a massive stack of foam. The plate is going to give you some pop and it is going to stabilize the shoe, but it's not going to make it too harsh of a ride, which made it a nice shoe for a lot of my regular training paces as well as my faster running paces. All right guys, now diving into the upper of this shoe. This is a very structured upper. When I did the unboxing overview and first run video, I called this a Carhartt upper. And you can see the material here. It is thick, like a waxed canvas. I'm not sure exactly why they chose this material. They might want the shoe to have a little bit more durability. I know that's something that Hoka talked about with the shoe in general, with the shoe positioning it as that higher price point $275 shoe. They want it to last a little bit longer for training, but it is a very thick material. And I've been running in the winter here, so I haven't had a chance to test it in the heat. I did take it on the treadmill one time. I'm assuming it's going to feel a little bit harder on foot than another shoe like the Vaporfly, which has holes in the upper. This thing does not have holes in the upper, but I also didn't have any issues with it feeling like it was heating my foot up in the runs that I did. Granted, the hottest that I've run in the shoe outside so far has probably been 60 to 65 degrees. Now, the fit and feel of this upper is decently comfortable. The side of my foot was pinched in a little bit on the left here. That's just due to the way my foot is shaped. I felt it today. I think it's because I've been running in that New Balance 880 and I get a lot of rubbing in that shoe. So this isn't going to be the widest toe box, but it's also definitely not as narrow as a Saucony, a Nike, or that New Balance 880 that I've been running in. But that is something to note. If you do have a wider foot, you need that 2E, 4E. Probably not going to be the best option for you here. You might want to look toward that New Balance line of shoes because those have a little bit of a wider toe box than this guy. Now the lockdown on this shoe has been great. Sometimes with these taller stack shoes, it can feel a little bit wiggly and wobbly, but my foot was locked down in here. There is a structured heel counter, and that's something that I'm seeing in a lot of the racing shoes this year that's been added by these brands. They're adding this for more support, more stability. It locks the foot in place. It gives more of a nice, solid training feel, and I don't mind that. Again, some of these elements that they've added to the shoe, like the extra foam, the wider base, the more structured upper, these are going to add a little bit of weight, but it's also going to make the shoe a more comfortable experience for many of us on race day who aren't just going to be running up on our toes for the entirety of the race and finishing in 2 hours and 10 minutes. So these changes to these mass-produced marathon racer shoes make them a much more viable option for a lot of runners out there. Now you can see around the back here, we have this nice stretchy elastic heel collar. Again, this helps with the lockdown, and I had no issues in the shoe at all with slipping and sliding around. It's a really nice fit, and it does feel like every bit of that $275 that you're going to be paying for the shoe. And the laces are a little bit silly. I called them Christmas present ribbons in my unboxing and overview video that we did. And I still think it's a little bit of an odd, curious, silly choice to put this type of a lace on a shoe. They're trying to make a statement. They definitely made a statement. I'm not sure what that statement is. Maybe their statement is that they like doing things differently. This is a different shoe. This is a wacky shoe. They definitely got that across with these laces. That being said, they're different. I didn't have any issues with them getting untied. So I guess good job, Hoka, for creating a lace that doesn't get untied, even though it's a little bit different. It's not my favorite choice of material, but at $275, maybe next time in the next version of the shoe, add in an alternate, more standard pair of laces. But if you're paying for a $275 shoe, I'm sure you can also buy a $5 replacement pair of laces, or even pull one of your old running shoelaces into here if you need to save some extra bucks. I'm sure you can figure out a way to make it work if the laces are a big concern for you. But for me, didn't have to untie any of that. And then we have a little nice gusset in here. You can see the tongue is locked in place, not going to be moving around at all. And we do have this stretchy type of tongue, very similar to that Asics Gel Nimbus 25 tongue. If you've ever run in that shoe, that's a pretty similar feel to what you're getting in here. It's not as stretchy as the Gel Nimbus. Gel Nimbus, I feel like I could pull that one up to my knee bone. That's not going to happen in here, but it is a nice little stretchy tongue action. Now diving into the ride of the shoe, this was a fun, stable, and very cushioned ride. So the fun is gonna come from all this foam you're getting in the forefoot. It is super bouncy, and with this geometry, if you take a look at this, you can see it is super rockered up here in the forefoot. It just rolls you right along at any pace. I felt super comfortable in this. When heel landing, I didn't feel like I was landing on a pinhead back here, which can happen with some of these other marathon racing shoes where you land on the heel, you feel like you're gonna roll your ankle. Because we get so much foam here, I wasn't getting that experience. It was a nice, solid, stable landing platform back here. That being said though, if we take a look at the geometry and what happens with having this thicker midfoot than the forefoot, is that for a heel striker, the thicker foam here can act as a little bit of a braking force. Let me go get a standard running shoe so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. So I've got two different examples for you here. I have the New Balance SC Trainer and the Nike Pegasus. So the Nike Pegasus is a classic daily trainer with a 10mm drop. So what that means is out in the back here, this is 10mm higher than the forefoot. So when you land on the back of the platform, the foam compresses and you gently tip forward. There's not a rocker or anything, but because you're getting more foam back here, if you're landing on the heel, it gives you a nice bit of cushion so you can naturally move your foot forward if you are a heel striker. Now thinking about the SC Trainer here, it's the same thing, except we see more of a rockered feature in the back, so you get more assistance rolling through the stride when you do land on the heel. Now if we take a look at what we're getting in the Cielo, you see it looks a little bit like there is that rocker in the back, but it actually cuts off, and if you look at where the foam ends, your heel is here and there's not much foam extending back, and you pair that with the fact that there's more foam in the midfoot than in the rear. When you land on the rear, you have to fight against this, what feels like a bump in the midfoot to roll forward. And so that's the braking force that I'm describing when landing at certain angles, at certain paces on the rear here. And I didn't feel like this all the time, but when I was heel striking, it did feel sometimes like the thickness of the midsole in the midfoot compared to the rear made me need to get over that hump and fight through to get to the forefoot and push off my stride. Now it sounds like I was using a ton of effort and was running slowly doing this. That's not the case, but it's just a feeling like there's something there that shouldn't be there that's not letting me roll through the stride as quickly as I'd want to. And with the shoe like this, when you're hitting it in the midfoot and the forefoot, it is a beautiful experience, just completely gliding you along. It feels like you could run for hours. It's a super comfortable shoe. When you are midfoot to forefoot, it's a really nice experience. But at certain paces and for certain mechanics, the way that they've shaped this midsole foam here, it's similar to what's in that Mizuno Wave Rebellion Flash 2 and Pro 2. That's going to be a problem for certain people. So if you are a midfoot to forefoot striker and you want something super fun, bouncy, and cushioned, this could be a good option. I really enjoyed it for my long run. It had enough support for the entirety of that effort. I was getting a nice bounce the entire time. I was getting a nice bounce at any pace. It's easy to run in. It has a little bit more weight, which made it not the best choice for running on a lot of hills. So I wouldn't recommend this shoe if you have a super hilly marathon. But if you have a relatively flatter marathon and you're a mid to forefoot striker, this is going to be a really nice option. Now, this will also work great for a variety of paces. And throughout my 50 miles of testing, I did everything from 8-minute, 8:30 paces all the way down to 5:50 paces. And the shoe worked great for all of those paces. Now, if you are a faster runner who is a little bit lighter on your feet, maybe you run with a 180, 185, 190 cadence and you're running in that 5-minute range, you might not prefer the shoe. You might want something a little bit lighter, a little bit less foam to turn over the legs a little bit quicker. You might probably prefer a Vaporfly over this, one of those more traditional marathon racing shoes. But if you're like me, if you run with a little bit more force, maybe your cadence is in the 160s or 170s, and you're not running in 5-minute pace ranges, you're running 6 or 7 or 8-minute pace ranges, this is going to be a really nice option. And it's going to be a really good option at that $275 price point for training, because it's a more comfortable shoe than almost any of the marathon racers that I've tested recently. And so the big question though, when it comes to that, and Hoka has said they want to make this a little bit more of a durable line of shoes versus the Rocket X2 and some of those other traditional marathon racers, is how the durability will be and what we're going to see from this outsole rubber. And so I have the left shoe here, and I do have some sort of a form imbalance, so I drag my left foot a little bit more. And so you can see this is my highest wear area across either of the shoes. And at 50 miles, I have started wearing down the foam a little bit. I'm not sure if this is going to affect the ride too much. And even if we got this shoe up to 250, 300 miles, I don't know how much of this foam would be gone, but that is something that's a little bit weird to me that they didn't just extend the rubber back here. They could have, I mentioned this in one of my earlier videos, they could have removed this rubber and just put it in the back here. That would have been a super easy fix to make this a more durable shoe, but that's not the case, and we do see exposed foam. I'm not sure if it's going to affect the performance too much, but that is something to note, that if you are a heel striker, you're going to be chewing up this foam pretty good. Now, we do see a lot of rubber coverage and a thick amount of rubber coverage on this as well. If we compare this guy to something like the Vaporfly, you can see this layer of rubber that we get on the Vaporfly is just so much thinner. And we do have coverage, but it's only in the forefoot here, and then none in the midfoot, and just these tiny strips in the back here. And my heel wear on this Vaporfly is actually even worse after a comparable number of miles. So it does seem like the foam itself, whatever PIBA that they're using in the Hoka, is a little bit more durable than the exposed ZoomX. I believe this Vaporfly only has about 40 miles on it. Again, I ran on it one time before I raced, and I haven't raced since then, so it hasn't gotten much use other than a few tests I've done this year. But this is telling me that this PIBA foam in the Hoka is probably going to be a little bit more durable than the ZoomX. So if that is a consideration for you and you want to use your racing shoe for long runs, for workouts, then the Hoka probably is going to be a good option. Now, the one area that I have not been able to test the shoe yet is wet weather performance. So in terms of the outsole grip, unfortunately, I can't tell you that, because every time that I've tested the shoe, it's been dry. I just haven't been able to do it. So I'll probably take the shoe up to 100 miles because I'm loving it so much, and even maybe up to 200 miles. So when I do an 100-mile review of the shoe, I will let you know how the wet weather performance is on the rubber. But just looking at this, it has a really nice amount of rubber, and also it's textured. So it should be decent, but you can only tell these things sometimes when you actually put them to the test. So we will have to wait and see how it does on a real rainy day. Now, in terms of who this shoe is best for, I would highly recommend this if you are looking to make a sub 3-hour marathon attempt. And so for that pace range of fitness, you're going to want a shoe that's fast, that's bouncy, that feels like it can support an all-out assault on speed, but that also has enough stability and cushion so that if you do slow down in the back stages of the race, and even with being out there for 3 hours, you have more comfort, you have more support than something like the Vaporfly, where when you slow down and when you heel strike, that has you wobbling all over the place. And so if we take a look at this Vaporfly here, you can see the massive difference in width, even just eyeballing it. We don't even need to pull out any rulers or measurements. There's a huge difference in how wide these platforms are. And so if you're looking to go 255, 258 in the marathon, having something like the Cielo X1, even though it is a little bit heavier, is going to give you more comfort and support over the course of the race. And so when your form degrades, you can be a little bit more confident and sure-footed in the back half. And with the price of this guy being at $275, yes, that is $15 to $25 more expensive than a lot of the other shoes on the market, but you should be able to get some more training miles out of the shoe compared to some of its competitors, with it holding up with that nice rubber outsole that we see. Now, there are some cases where I would not recommend this shoe, and so I've brought out a few of the other competitors that might be a better option for you if you meet certain criteria. So the first alternative that I brought out here is the New Balance SC Elite V4. And so this is a little bit of a firmer shoe. It's not as fun. It has a more traditional geometry. It's not as rockered. My guy Curiosities called it a long sloping rocker, which is a really great way to put it. You can see starting at about the midfoot here, it gently curves up versus the Hoka. Versus the Hoka we have here, it is like an elf heel. It just pops up super aggressively, ramps up in the front. And so with this New Balance SC Elite V4, this is going to be a better option for you. One, if you have a wider foot, this is a lot more forgiving of a toe box. And they also make this in a wide version. So if you need that wider fit, this is going to be the best carbon plated marathon racer for you. And then also if you want a stable shoe, but something a little bit lighter weight, not as crazy looking and maybe a little bit easier to run in as an aggressive heel striker, then this is going to be a better option for you too. It feels more normal to run in than the Hoka. I've run in this at a variety of paces too, and it feels pretty good to land in the heel back here. Now, I do have to caveat all of this with saying that I still need to do my 22-mile long run in this guy. I think I'm going to do that this weekend, so stay tuned. I can't imagine that my thoughts would change too drastically. I know a lot of you guys out there who have this shoe have already done long runs and say, if anything, the foam gets a little bit better. It's not going to get more uncomfortable, but full transparency, this shoe is not fully yet tested by me, but it is going to be the best option for you if you want more stability with more of a normal feel or a wider toe box. Now, if you are a higher cadence runner and you want something lighter weight and are a 4-foot striker and think you're going to run your whole marathon with strength without slowing down, not overpronating, not heel striking and having your form degrading, then the Nike Vaporfly is going to be a much better choice for you. Now, this shoe hasn't gotten a lot of pop recently because it released last year and we've been talking about new. Everything is new all the time, but this is still a really nice choice. You got the full length Beta ZoomX, you got the carbon fiber fly plate in there. It is super light on foot. It feels so much lighter than almost every other racing shoe, and the ZoomX is still a really great foam. It's nice and soft. It gets more of that compressive feeling, so every time you land in this guy, it feels like you sink into the foam so briefly and just get a nice soft release back up. So this is still a great option for a softer, faster feeling ride, a more traditional, shout out to 2017 marathon racing shoe than what we see in the Hoka Cielo X1. Now, another good alternative for someone in that sub 3 hour range who wants something a little bit lighter, maybe for a hillier marathon, but still fun to run in, still bouncy and energetic, that would be the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 here. This has a really nice bouncy Piba foam. It's also super stable from the width of the platform back here. A very easy shoe to run in. I don't get the feeling like I'm fighting against the foam at all, and landing on the heel at any pace is still comfortable. So it works for a variety of foot strikes. This is the shoe that I recommended as my top marathon racing shoe of 2023 for most people, and that still is gonna stand. So if you're in that 3 to 330 range and you want something a little bit lighter, more normal to run in, I would recommend the Endorphin Pro 3. Now, the last shoe that I wanted to highlight here as an alternative to the Cielo X1 is the Alphafly 3. And so I would take this guy over the Cielo X1 if you are a mid to 4-foot striker, and if you're going to go sub 3, maybe even sub 250, and you want something that's fun and fast. This thing takes no prisoners. It is not the most comfortable thing to run in. The upper fit is fine. The step and feel is fine. It's just, it feels like you're running on top of technology in this guy with the Zoom AirPods up here, because you are. This is is not a normal running shoe to run in. It's really bouncy when you hit these pods right and you're cranking those legs at a fast pace. But if you're running at a 3 to 4 hour marathon pace, this thing is not my favorite in the world to be running in. So I'd recommend this for faster runners who are going to be forefoot striking and who want something a little bit more aggressive to run in than a Pro 3 or a Vaporfly. Actually, I'm going to do a bonus one because it was sitting right here. But the New Balance SC Trainer V2 has been my top recommendation for a 4-hour marathon shoe. So if you're in that 4-hour marathon range and you don't want to spend $275 on a shoe and you want a shoe that you can train in as well as run the race in, I would suggest this New Balance SC Trainer V2. It is super comfortable. It has almost a similar feel to that Hoka Cielo in that you get a really aggressive rocker geometry out here with a full carbon fiber plate, but it's not awkward to run in. It's really easy to run in. It rolls you right along, and it's about the same weight as that Hoka Cielo X1 actually. And it also provides a decent degree of stability with the width we're seeing of the platform out here. So for 4-hour marathoners who want a carbon fiber plated shoe for training and for racing, I would suggest this New Balance SC Trainer V2. All right, guys, so there you have it. One more look at the Hoka Cielo X1 here. I highly endorse this as a marathon racing shoe. Also, probably the best and most expensive shoe you could buy for a marathon training and long run shoe. But if you want just a great long run shoe for your marathon workouts, this guy would be it. This is super fun to run in. I'm going to keep getting miles in it. I have a ton of other marathon racers to test. Also going to probably be bringing in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 and maybe even some of the other new ones soon. But anytime I don't need to test something, this is going to be what's on my foot for a long run because it's just that fun to run in. So let me know which marathon racers you want to see reviewed next on the channel. As always, I appreciate you watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another video.